Hello, I'm Brent Stafford, and this is Aftermath of Murder Survivor Stories, a multi-part video series produced in support of the National Victims of Crime Week. Aftermath of Murder goes behind the headlines as survivors share their stories about the loss, grief, trauma, and the hope for healing in the aftermath of murder. Joining us today is Lori and Stuart Davis. Their son Chad was murdered in 2008 in what has become known in the media as the body in the barrel murder. Chad's killers were convicted just last week after a harrowing 6-week trial in which Lori and Stuart were called to testify. Lori, Stuart, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
So tell us how Chad died and why.
On February 6, 2008, Chad was lured into a garage at a home here in Winnipeg, and his head was beaten in. He was then wrapped in plastic, folded in half, put in a barrel, and taken out north of Winnipeg to the Lee River and dropped into the icy waters of the Lee River. His body was found, or surfaced 189 days later, so he was missing for 189 days before his body turned up in the barrel on the Lee River. It was in relation to a drug debt. A young man here in the city owed Chad money, and rather than pay him the money, this is what he did to him.
So Chad was involved in the underworld?
Yes, in the subculture of cocaine.
So how has that affected the situation in terms of the murder? Obviously there's an impact in terms of public opinion about that. It obviously impacts you.
The public has an opinion that if you're in the drug trade, you deserve what you get. They don't relate to the fact that that is a person. That person has loved ones out there who miss them.
Tell us about Chad. He's more than obviously a body in the barrel. I couldn't believe that, the media using that.
Yeah. Well, at first, it's heartless, but honestly, Brent, you do desensitize over time because we've heard so many horrific things over the last 6 years, because it's been 6 years since this happened. It's probably not a good thing, but it's a matter of survival for us. But we have become, I would say, wouldn't you, Stuart?
You tend to look at it from a different perspective.
Yeah.
You try to sit outside it because you get to a certain point where no matter how vested you are in it, you have to sit and separate yourself from it because you just can't allow it to take you down.
And you had asked Brent, what was Chad like? And I guess, we try to think of Chad, just growing up. He was a very gregarious young man, risk taker, would do just about anything. Great athlete, great sense of humor, and a face that had an expression for just about anything, and his expression could tell 1,000 words.
How angry are you that Chad brought this upon himself?
I get pretty angry. My feeling is that Chad, could have had whatever he wanted. He had a very, I'll say a normal upbringing. We're sort of a boring couple. We, he played hockey, did all the stuff that kids do growing up. And I guess for me, I think why couldn't he have made better choices? Why did you have to take this route? My husband has his own business. He tried employing Chad. There's nothing we wouldn't do for our boys.
He made his choices, as we all do. And I don't agree with his choice, and I don't think it was the best choice, but it's a choice he made, and that was his decision. I don't harbor him ill will because he did it. I would have preferred he didn't.
And again, just to reiterate for our viewers, you've just come out of the murder trial. It's been days.
Yeah, it's been days. It was 10 days ago that the two men accused were convicted.
Right. And you both were called to testify.
I testified on day 4 of the trial just 6 weeks ago, and Stuart testified on day 5 of the trial.
There was the trauma of having to testify, having to go over your statement, having to be prepared, because you have no idea what's going on. I mean, we'd never been in a courtroom. Suddenly, we're now not only going into a courtroom, we're being put on a stand, and we're being grilled on things.
And cross-examined by the defense.
And we have no idea what this is. Yeah. And that in itself is very scary. people don't understand what happens to someone when they go on the stand, what is actually involved. The emotions for someone to have to go and sit there in an environment where you have no control and no say of what's going on, and you have people who are asking you questions, and you can't necessarily answer the question the way you would like to. You're stuck with answering the question the way they want it answered, and you can't add to it.
For me, it was all language. They had their own language, and a lot of what I had was hearsay, we'll say, and they wouldn't allow that. And it was just very challenging to come out with the right words.
You're hearing constantly people telling you things about your son that is not necessarily nice. And if you've got the defense, they're bringing up everything and anything they can to paint the picture of your son as being some sort of a monster. Some of it, we don't argue, some of it was true, but they take it to the extreme in order to present their case.
And that's part of the game, is it not?
Oh, from their point of view, it's a game.
Yeah.
You've got to somehow separate yourself from the events that are going on. We did not sit through the first few days, which were the gruesome days of the trial, but every other day we were there. And you hear these things constantly about what happened. And you can't allow yourself to just think of that as your son, or you'll just break down.
When the verdict came down, guilty, do you feel that justice was done?
It's a matter of how you define justice. I mean, they have taken two people who are now in jail for the rest of their lives. Nobody's going to win on this. Everybody's family, even their family, is suffering tremendously from it all. But at least in society's point of view, it has taken two people who are doing things which we as society don't agree with off the street.
Yeah, for the rest of their lives.
So, society's point of view, yes, there's a benefit. From us personally, it really doesn't change anything anymore.
During the trial, you got some support from some organizations and people here in Winnipeg. Tell me about that. Who helped you?
Well, first of all, I should say our family and friends were a great support. We got also MOVA. One of their workers was in every day with us, victim support services through the government. As well, friends that we've come to know through this process, through losing Chad. Just other survivors of homicide were there in court with us too. So we had a lot of support.
And we had great support from the Crown side.
Yes.
We had great Crown.
Great detectives.
Had great detectives.
Yeah.
The detectives were at the trial every day.
Every day with us. And the Crown, we can't say a bad thing about the Crown or the detectives.
What about the media? Do you have a bad thing to say about them?
There's good and bad in everything. I mean, there are things that they will say for the case of making their news, the way they may phrase it or the pictures they may use. There are times when it comes across from our perspective as very hurtful because that's not how we saw our son, or that's not, we don't like seeing a picture of a barrel. But for the most part, they were fairly good at it.
So now the trial's over. The killers have been convicted.
Correct.
What's next for you?
Well, this has been a major part of our life for 6 years and a real intense for 6 weeks. Now we've got to try to get away from that, get back into a normal life as best you can.
We both work full time, so I mean, work is a big part.
Yeah, we go back to work and we will
try to
start to resume life as you normally would.
Is there healing?
To some extent, there always will be, but to a certain extent, you'll never forget. And I mean, we will be involved with these accused or these convicted murderers' lives for the rest of their lives through parole hearings or anything else that happens. So every time something happens, we will be re-victimized by it all. They will appeal this, we will be there, and we'll have to go through it all again.
If you or someone you know has experienced a loss through homicide, go to the Manitoba Organization for Victim Assistance website at mova.ca to find available resources and information on homicide support. If you are interested in volunteering or to make a donation, please visit the website or call the numbers below. This has been Aftermath of Murder Survivor Stories.